I want to go to Noel Pearson now, the Cape York Indigenous leader and chief voice architect. And I had a chat with him today, and I want to pick up here where in the discussion where we're talking about how partisan the debate has become, especially given that he started this process almost 20 years ago by engaging with then Prime Minister John Howard.
I felt that we could have got common ground with him at the 2004 election. We were slow. We were slow to step up to the Prime Minister at that time. But in those 3 years from 4 to 7, I continued to make representations to him about, this is a legacy issue, Mr. Howard, for you. And it's going to be so important. That is why he gave the commitment to constitutional recognition at the 2007 eve of the federal election.
But he's a vocal opponent of the voice now.
And that's such a pity, because the legacy of this success, and there is going to be success, Chris, I'm absolutely sure of it. We are going to succeed with this. That legacy is in large part his, because he kicked the ball off in 2007. It's just a fact of political history that finally the Conservatives lost office last May. Albanese came in absolutely convicted about moving on that agenda. And it wasn't a new agenda. This was the agenda of the Morrison government. And it's such a pity bipartisanship has fallen apart.
Now, there have been some furphies and some toxic rhetoric on both sides of this debate leading up to the campaign. On the yes case, you must have been very disappointed about Megan Davis and her extra pages in the Uluru statement. It is a furphy, but she's used some pretty loose language that's allowed for this confusion, hasn't she?
Well, and so have I, right? I've been, I've been driven by anxiety and urgency and so on. And 6 weeks ago, I realised, no, we've got to offer Australians a vision of positivity, of reconciliation. If we're going to talk reconciliation, then our actions have got to show reconciliation. I think I've learned a big lesson from this. Certainly my advocacy has always been in favour of reconciliation, and I've made a commitment to myself that in the advocacy of this referendum, I am going to appeal to the better angels of our nature, including my own.
Yeah, that deals with some of the rhetoric and some of the aggression in the debate, and you making those statements about your own recognition and the way you want to go forward. But what about Megan Davis and talking about 26 pages in the Uluru statement? Now, I know that she went on to say that there's the statement at the front and then all the background material, but it's created a hell of a distraction, hasn't it?
Well, the No campaigner certainly attempted to exploit that. I think it's important to focus on the provision. The Uluru statement was the invitation, but we're actually not voting on the Uluru statement. We are voting on those 92 words that have been passed by the Parliament to amend the Australian Constitution. And those words are very simple, they're very straightforward. I urge every Australian to read them. They're in plain English, and they start with the words, "in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first peoples of Australia." I think those are the most important words.
There's a bit of history there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. When we make that acknowledgement, I think we take a mighty leap forward. And to have that in our Constitution of all places, I mean, it'll be a great achievement, and it will send a signal through the ages.
The main no argument is that a voice would be racially divisive. If there is an advisory body that's only open to people of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent, why is that not racially divisive?
Well, firstly, the actual democracy doesn't change. Our democracy is based on Parliament. We elect people into Parliament, and nobody other than the Parliament has the power to make laws for us because we've elected them. None of that changes. Parliament is supreme. Parliament has legislative responsibility for defining the voice, for regulating the voice. This is a voice from the outside into the Parliament. It doesn't affect our democracy in any way. We all have an equal opportunity to make representations to Parliament. It's just that we don't have a mechanism for a collective view on the part of the First Peoples to be gathered together and put to the executive government and Parliament.
What about some of these very sensitive issues like treaty, like reparations, like truth-telling even? These debates will go on regardless of whether or not there's a voice. If there is a voice, surely the voice will deal with these issues, make recommendations on these issues?
There's any number of issues that the voice will make representations about, but remember what the actual clause says: on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I mean, that's the real subject of representations. And the voice will talk about various subjects. In order to be influential, it can't be silly. It will destroy its credibility if it comes out with outlandish advice. I think, parliaments and governments will ignore outlandish advice, and any sensible proposal that comes from the voice will have to be considered. The government and Parliament of the day will have to consider the ramifications of what those proposals are and make the decisions accordingly.
On October the 15th, if the referendum's successful, we know there'll be a lot of work to do to design the legislation, put it through Parliament and move on with that agenda. What will it be like? What will happen on October the 15th if the referendum fails?
We're going to have to, the country will have to take stock of the meaning of no, because no will mean no movement forward. It'll mean the status quo, but it will also mean that we will have tried a path forward and we will have failed. And I think a cost will come with that. Certainly, leaders like me who proposed a moderate path through the centre we will be in a situation where we proposed a moderate path and we failed. What more do we have to contribute? I really think that it's a scenario that will be so disappointing for the country. I think this is a path we need to seize. This is the moment we need to seize. It's going to be good for Indigenous people, but it's going to be, more importantly, good for Australia that we do this. This is a moderate proposal, but it is a very profound proposal that I think we have everything as Australians to gain from, black and white, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. We have everything to gain from this and nothing to lose. I really believe that.
Noel Pearson, safe travels over the next 6 weeks.
Thank you, Chris.